Hey, what's up you guys? My name is Tyler Rugge. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be discussing Substrate for bearded dragons. Basically, I wanted to go into all the different substrate options that you have for bearded dragons. What's good, what's bad, and just different options you have. There are a lot of different options when it comes to substrate for bearded dragons, and it can get very confusing if you're not an experienced reptile owner when you're researching what substrate you should use, because there is so much conflicting information online and people are very divided when it comes to their opinions about bearded dragon substrate. It seems like almost nobody can really agree on what's good and what's bad. So I wanted to talk about all, or at least most, of the options that there are for bearded dragons and kind of go into the pros and cons of different ones and what my personal opinion is on those substrates. By the way, I'm here with Malachi, my bearded dragon. I have been keeping bearded dragons for around 6 years. In those 6 years, I have experimented with a lot of different substrate options, and I've kind of gotten a feel for what I personally like and what I dislike. And I've also learned a lot about what is safe and what isn't safe. So yeah, I'm just gonna be talking about all the different options there are. And also, with that being said, some people might disagree with my opinions on some of these substrates, and that is okay too. Let me know what you guys think down below and what your favorite option is for bearded dragons. And I'm going to now get straight into it so that the intro isn't 10 minutes long. Isn't that right, Malachi? You're like, let's just talk about some heckin' substrate. Shut the heck up. Basically, there are two kind of categories I'm gonna go into. There's loose substrates, and then there's like solid substrates, if that makes sense, like not loose. So loose substrates are controversial when it comes to bearded dragon keeping. In my opinion, loose substrates are not always bad. There are bad loose substrates, and in my opinion, there are loose substrates that are safer. Some people are completely against loose substrate though, and will only use other options. So before we talk about loose substrate, I'm gonna talk about the other options that are not loose. Basically, the most common, I would say, substrates that people use for bearded dragons that are not loose are tile, paper towel, non-adhesive shelf liners, and carpet. I am so concerned that he's gonna poop on my neck because he's eaten the past couple days. I don't know if he's pooped yet. I'm at risk. Anyways, so tile, paper towel, non-adhesive shelf liners, and carpet are the options that are not loose that I think are the most common. So we're gonna start with tile because I think tile is probably one of the most common substrates people use. Where are you trying to go? Like, honestly, what are you going for here? What are you trying to accomplish? So again, a lot of people swear by tile for bearded dragons. Also, a lot of people don't like tile. I used tile and I have kind of mixed feelings for it. I think the main reason a lot of people use tile for bearded dragons is because it's not a loose substrate. There is no risk of ingesting any substrate when they're on tile. Another good thing about tile is it's really easy to clean for the most part because your bearded dragon will poop on it, and then if you are on top of it and you get it right away, you pretty much just have to wipe it off, spray it down, and you're all good. Now, with that being said, when I used tile for my bearded dragon, it sometimes was more difficult to clean because my bearded dragon would poop on it and then walk all over it and smear it all over the enclosure, and then that sucked. So if you catch your bearded dragon's poop before they smear it everywhere, it makes it easier to clean on tile. A lot of people don't like tile because people say that it isn't good for their bones and it's harder for them to walk on because they kind of slip and slide everywhere. They have kind of long nails, and when they try to run, they like almost don't even go anywhere, or they go really slowly even though they're putting a lot of effort in because they're just like sliding on the tile. And that's something I experienced with my bearded dragon, Malachi. Malachi would slip and slide, and it was kind of hard for him to navigate his enclosure with tile. However, I feel like a way to avoid that would be if you're gonna use tile, maybe put like a lot of like kind of larger stones and pieces of wood so that they're gonna spend most of their time kind of climbing on different things like wood, rocks, things like that. And the tile would just kind of be underneath to catch anything. In my opinion, tile is an okay substrate for bearded dragons. It's not the most natural thing they can be kept on. Also, some people don't like tile because it doesn't allow them to dig at all, and digging is kind of like a natural behavior that bearded dragons like to do. So some people will also put a dig box in with the tile. Some people will do like half tile, half loose substrate. There's a lot of different options, but if you don't want to do loose substrate, then I think tile is probably going to be your best bet. So the next thing is paper towel. Paper towel, I don't think is super common for bearded dragons. I know a lot of people use paper towel for babies and juveniles just because they're more susceptible to impaction from loose substrate, and it's also a lot more sanitary than using like a loose substrate or a mat or anything, because you can literally just take the paper towel out, throw it away, and replace it. It's a lot easier to clean. But I haven't really seen many people use paper towel for adult bearded dragons, but I do think it is a good option, especially if you have a smaller bearded dragon. But for an adult, I probably wouldn't use paper towel. It's also kind of a waste having to like throw it all away and replace it all the time. I mean, paper towel, I don't think it's a bad substrate. It's not a terrible option. If you want to use paper towel, go for it, but it just isn't something that I have much experience with. Again, I did it when my bearded dragons were really small, but I never really used it on adult bearded dragons, and I don't really know anyone personally who keeps adults on paper towel, but it is an option and I don't really see anything super wrong with it. And it also doesn't look as nice. You can get kind of nice looking tile, but paper towel just kind of looks like crap. That's something to keep in mind, but at the end of the day, is paper towel dangerous for your bearded dragon? I don't think so. I think you can use it if you want to. And then there's non-adhesive shelf liners. So shelf liners that don't have sticky stuff on the bottom. And what's really nice about these is you can just pull them out and clean them. And again, it's something that I would say a fair amount of people use for their bearded dragons. I don't really see anything wrong with it. It's kind of the same deal as paper towel and tiles. It's the same idea. And then last but not least, we have carpet. There's like carpet liners that they make for reptiles. Most people, I would say, don't recommend using these. I personally wouldn't use them for a lot of different reasons. First of all, they are hard to clean. They harbor bacteria. If your bearded dragon poops on it, it's gonna absorb all the bacteria, and there really isn't an easy way to get it super clean without like taking it out and putting it in the wash or something. And also, your bearded dragon's nails can get caught in the carpet. Their teeth can get caught in the carpet if they try to like strike something. I actually used to keep my leopard gecko on carpet when I first got a leopard gecko like 7 years ago. And I actually had an issue with him getting his nails caught in it. And when he would strike at crickets, he got his teeth stuck in the carpet a couple of times. So I, needless to say, stopped using carpet, and I don't recommend it now. So I probably wouldn't use carpet personally. Those are basically the four, I would say, most common non-loose substrates. So if you're not wanting to use loose substrate, I would go with probably either tile or the shelf liners. You could do paper towel, doesn't look very pretty. I think tile looks the best, but again, if your bearded dragon's having trouble like walking on it, you might want to try using something else. Now that we've covered all of those substrates, we're gonna get into the more controversial ones, which is loose substrate. Malachi, do you want to be here for the loose substrate talk? Malachi says, I'm kept on loose substrate and I hecking love it. The reason people don't like loose substrate for bearded dragons is because people have this idea in their head that their bearded dragon, if it consumes any amount of loose substrate, it's going to get impacted and die. And that just simply is not true. There are some loose substrates that pose as more of a risk of impaction than others, and the substrates that are high risk, I would not recommend using. Another thing that plays a factor into impaction is your husbandry. If your bearded dragon's temperatures are not hot enough, it causes them to be more at risk of impaction. If your bearded dragon is basking and is not warming up to the proper temperature, then they aren't going to be able to digest whatever is in their stomach properly, and it's going to just sit there, and that's basically what causes an impaction. And if it's not caught early on, it can be fatal. With that being said, I wouldn't worry about keeping your bearded dragon on loose substrate and it getting impacted, because chances are it's not going to be eating mouthfuls of its substrate. And if it only eats a tiny bit of its substrate here and there, like just gets a little bit in its mouth, if your temperatures are good, it's gonna pass everything no problem. You don't need to worry about it getting impacted. But with that being said, there are still some loose substrates that I would avoid using at all costs. And then there are some that I think can be okay. So we're gonna start with the ones that I would avoid. And the number one most notoriously bad substrate is calcium sand. Don't use calcium sand. Just don't do that. That's bad. Not only is it not natural at all whatsoever, but it's made out of calcium, which can actually encourage reptiles to consume it because reptiles need calcium. So if they are feeling like they need to get more calcium in them, they will just straight up eat the calcium sand to try to get more calcium. And if they're literally eating mouthfuls of calcium sand, there is going to be a higher risk of impaction. And also calcium sand is notorious for clumping up in your reptile's stomach and causing an impaction. So I wouldn't use calcium sand. Please just don't do that. That's bad. So next we have crushed walnut shells. I don't see a lot of people using the crushed walnut as a substrate to begin with, but I have seen some people use it for bearded dragons, and I would avoid it because although they are pretty fine little particles, they're known to be sharp and they can actually damage the inside of your bearded dragon's digestive tract and cut them up from the inside if they ingest any of it. So just for that reason alone, don't use crushed walnut shells for bearded dragons. It's not a good idea. I would not recommend it. So calcium sand and the crushed walnut are the two that I would absolutely say avoid. The next one that I personally would not use, that I do see some people using for their bearded dragon, is Eco Earth or coconut husk, anything like that. So Eco Earth is actually a pretty good substrate in my opinion to mix with other things for reptiles that require really high humidity. Because Eco Earth retains humidity really well and stays really moist, it's good for things that require high humidity. Bearded dragons, on the other hand, do not require high humidity, and people will use Eco Earth just dry in their bearded dragon's enclosure. And the reason I don't really like it is because it's really loose and really dusty. So it's just not really meant to be used as a dry substrate really, and I just don't think it really works well for bearded dragons. So for that reason, I wouldn't really recommend using Eco Earth. So the next thing that I've seen people use that I don't really like on its own is play sand. So people will just fill their enclosure with play sand and throw their bearded dragon in there. And I just don't really like it. I think it's a personal preference thing. Again, if your bearded dragon just happens to consume a little bit of the sand, they'll probably be able to pass it fine. I just don't like how loose it is. I feel like it's easier for them to ingest it when it's just straight up sand. Yeah, I just don't think it's a very suitable substrate for bearded dragons. If you're going to go the route of using loose substrate, I think you should try to mimic what they live on in the wild. And in the wild, they don't live on just straight up sand. They encounter a lot of different terrains in the wild. Some of it might be sand, some of it's dirt, some of it's like dirt and sand mixed together, some of it's rocky. So what you need to realize is when in captivity, they don't have a huge space to roam around. They're in a little tank, and I don't think a tank full of sand is going to be the most suitable option for them. However, there are a lot of people who use play sand and don't have any issues, and they like it. I personally wouldn't use play sand for a bearded dragon on its own. However, some people do, so I just want to throw that out there. But for me personally, I don't like it. You might be like, Tyler, what the heck do you like to use as a loose substrate? Because you literally just talk shit about everything. So I personally really like a mixture of play sand and organic soil. So in my opinion, when you mix these two things together, it makes a really nice bioactive mix. And it's not super loose like it would be if it were just sand. With the soil mixed in, it will kind of like compact itself on the bottom a lot more and be not very loose. So then when your bearded dragon's eating stuff, I don't think it's as easy for them to get like mouthfuls of their substrate. And I just feel like it's a lot more natural. And also, if you're doing a mixture like that, you can add isopods and plants and different things and make a bioactive setup, which is actually what I did. And I'll link my videos down below about that if you're interested in that. But what's really nice about that is the long-term maintenance of cleanup is a lot easier. And again, it's a lot more natural for them in my opinion. And the other option, if you don't want to like mix your own by mixing sand and soil, you can buy different arid mixtures that are made for animals that live in a drier terrain. I got mine for my bearded dragon from the Bio Dude because he makes really, really good bioactive substrate mixtures, but I know there are other companies that make arid mixtures as well. Arcadia also has one. So these are substrates that are made for animals like bearded dragons who live in a drier, deserty area, but it's safe for them, and it's also really good if you want to do a bioactive setup. And in my opinion, if you're going to use a loose substrate, I think it's best to go bioactive because it doesn't take that much extra effort to make it bioactive, and it also looks a lot prettier. It's a lot more natural of an environment for them, and it's also self-sustaining. So if you're gonna go with loose substrate for a bearded dragon, in my opinion, that's the route to go. Just to recap, we have, Malachi's just really trying to like leave right now. Things I would avoid: calcium sand, eco earth, walnut shells, just not really my cup of tea as far as loose substrates go. I personally wouldn't do it. I would also avoid carpet, personally, just not for me. If you're gonna do a loose substrate, do a mixture of sand and soil, or get an arid mixture that's pre-mixed. If you don't wanna do loose substrate, maybe you're too worried about it, or it just isn't for you, I would either probably go with tile or a shelf liner. Those are the best options in my opinion. Again though, some people don't like those. Maybe you won't like them either. I personally wasn't a huge fan of the tile, but I think it worked well for the most part. Ever since I went bioactive for my bearded dragon, I like cannot go back. I just am obsessed with it. I love it so much. I hope this video helped you guys if you were looking to learn more about substrates for bearded dragons. Again, this is all, a lot of it's just my opinion and what I personally think, but again, I've tried a lot of these different options, so I'm just letting you know what I personally like and what I personally dislike. Feel free to do your own research, try whatever you want and see what works for you. Talk to other people. There's tons of awesome forums online where you can talk to bearded dragon people and figure out what they like. And also, let's start a conversation in the comments below. Let me know what you like to use for your bearded dragon. Maybe let me know what you hate or things you've tried and didn't like. My fave has just always been bioactive ever since I went bioactive. I want everything to be bioactive. I just think it's so cool. So thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you liked it, make sure to give it a little thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel. I post videos every week. Check out my social media. Those will be linked down in the description below. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Tyler Rugge. And I will see you guys in my next video. And so will Malachi, maybe. Do you want to be in the next video? You're like, no, I was trying to leave this whole time. Do you think I talk too much, Malachi? He's like, yeah, you do. Okay, sorry.